Okay, welcome back to 180 Days of Lang, but we're going to do something a little bit different here because I know logical fallacies is not something that everybody teaches and everybody's familiar with, and they're hard to understand. So I'm just going to go through 12 logical fallacies in under 12 minutes. That's the time goal. And this is just like how I talk about these to my students and how I introduce them. So I find it helpful to group logical fallacies into categories. So these first three are the SNAP decision group. This slideshow is included in the Unit 3 lessons, by the way, check the description. So in the SNAP decision group, first off, we have the either or fallacy. This is also called the black and white fallacy. The idea is that it's when you suggest there's only two options to something, and usually the idea is that it leads someone to one obvious choice. So I have this little framing here as an example of an either or fallacy, but another example is when you hear politicians say things like, oh, do you want us to go back to the dark ages, or do you want us to invest in high-speed rail or something like that? There's one obvious outcome to the choice, and that's how it advances their argument, but also there could be a lot of things in between that they're ignoring, so it's a fallacy. The second thing, hasty generalizations. This is when you make a rushed conclusion when you're not considering all of the factors. So if you think about how stereotypes work, you're making judgments about a group based on the characteristics or actions of a few people. That is a hasty generalization and a particularly vile one. But it can also just be as simple as you draw your conclusions and you don't have all of the facts first. So if you are making an assumption or a generalization about a whole big group and you're not providing evidence to that, and you're not using qualifying language like many or some, you're just saying all, then that is a hasty generalization as well. Appeals to ignorance is difficult to explain because it's like about the absence of something. So if a kid's trying to talk their way out of trouble and they say, you can't prove I wasn't at home sleeping, you can't prove I wasn't, is the construction that is an appeal to ignorance. Like in this example, there's ghosts in her attic. No one's been able to prove that they aren't there. So you can't prove the absence of something. So that's an appeal to ignorance. In the second example, Marsha's doing a great job as team captain since nobody has complained about her. Maybe her teammates just don't care, or Marsha has intimidated them into their being afraid to complain, which is not good team captain behavior. So that would be a fallacy as well. All right, so we will skip through the practice and go to the category 2, the people group of fallacies. So these all have to do with your reactions to individuals or groups of people, and that's the basis of the logic. So bandwagon appeal. If you ask any sports fan, what's a bandwagon fan? Someone who only follows a team when they start winning, right? It's the popular thing to do. So if the premise of the argument is just that many people believe it or many people do it, so it must be good, that's a bandwagon fallacy. So there can be more to it. If you can show data or things to support the quality of it along with the popularity, that might just be like an ethos appeal. But if it's just on the popularity of it, like this toothpaste ad here, then that's bandwagon fallacy. Authority fallacy. So it can just build your ethos to have a good celebrity spokesperson or to cite a credible source for it. But if your whole basis of an argument is a famous person or authoritative person says it's true, so it must be true, that's a logical fallacy. So parents, if we sometimes say, your kid asks, how come I have to clean my room? Because I said so. That's not actually like good reasoning. It's persuasive and it's true, but it is a logical fallacy. All right, and ad hominem attacks. This is when you go after the person and not the argument. So you attack their character, their credentials. So if you're debating with somebody and you say, what would you know about it? You're like 12. That's an ad hominem attack. Politicians do this all the time, more and more recently, unfortunately. So our next group is that's a stretch group. That's where there's like maybe a little bit of a logical connection between two things, but they're taking the connection way too far for it to be logical. Our first one of these is a slippery slope fallacy. This is saying that if you take this one minor action now, there will be a major, ridiculous, sometimes consequence later on. So this one I want to emphasize is forward looking. The thing hasn't happened yet, but you're saying that it will. So those books, if you give a mouse a cookie or if you give a pig a pancake, they're saying this will lead to this, will lead to this, and then this will be the outcome. Now those are sweet and silly, but sometimes these are used to make really just like ridiculous, outrageous claims based on small actions like this crazy billboard. On the opposite side of that, faulty causality, that word is not casualty, it is causality, is when you're tracing the outcome of something back to a cause only because it happened right before. Not because you can prove the connection, but it just happened right before. So like this example here, if you ever washed your car, you paid money at the car wash, and then it starts to rain, you're like, oh, of course it rained. I just washed my car. You washing your car didn't cause it to rain. So that's a logical fallacy. This is another time where you'll see there will be correlations between two data points. Oh, these things rose at the same time. That doesn't mean that one thing caused another. You have to prove causality with more data points than just the timing. And then the last one in this, that's a stretch group, a weak analogy. So it's useful sometimes to use analogies to compare two unlike things, but if they're too dissimilar, particularly if you're trying to prove a point about people, that weak analogies can be downright offensive sometimes too. So here's a less offensive example. If a parent is saying to their kid, you need to stop playing games until 2 a.m. You're only getting 4 hours of sleep a night. But the kid says Einstein only got 4 hours of sleep a night and he was a genius. A 7th grader that plays Fortnite until 2 a.m. is not Einstein. So that's not a strong enough comparison. That will be a weak analogy fallacy. And the final group, the look over there group, because these are just like total distractors, off the wall different. So this one, sorry to put this on your screen, but you can have emotional appeals that are connecting to the audience, but you can take it too far. Now, these examples are very sad appeals to pity, but overly emotional appeals can also include other strong emotions that aren't just pity, like fear or anger or pride even. But in this case here, it's arguing that a little bit of money can rescue these animals, but that's overshadowed by the strikingly sad image of these chained up dogs. So these can be so ineffectual because people just turn off the TV completely when they see these ads, and they're a logical fallacy. And this one, a straw man argument. This is unfortunately like another increasingly common one, especially on like angry podcasters that just like yell on episodes. This is like where you say, if someone brings up a point, and then instead of arguing the point, you argue like a kind of related point, but it's not the main thing. And you always pick an easier, if we're using a straw man, you pick like an easier point to attack. So that's why it's called a straw man, right? If it's easier to knock down a scarecrow, right? Like a man made of straw, than an actual person. So you're just picking a weaker argument. So let's say they're having a debate about healthcare and someone's, oh, you just want to let anybody into the country, don't you? What? What are you talking about? We weren't talking about like immigration or borders. We were talking about healthcare. That's a straw man argument. All right, and this last one. So I put this in the set because it's really, if it's nothing else from these other 11 fallacies, this might be the one that it is. A non sequitur fallacy is a statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement. It just has nothing to do with anything else. So it's if the thing that you're concluding from the data point doesn't really fit the premise, like in this cartoon here. So this one isn't as common. It's just a fallacy of last resort if you've rolled out all of the other ones. So that is how I spend more time and give more examples, but that's a brief rundown of the 12 logical fallacies that I teach to my students, and I have them have little flashcards where they fill this out. And then we do some station activities, which I'll cover in the next video. And then we do a quiz over these. These are super helpful for students to understand because they don't want to use them in their own writing, but they also will see them out in the world. And it empowers them, as I like to say in AP Lang, to not get scammed and to just feel, again, empowered to understand, like, to think critically, like the thing we want them to do. So knowing just a basic set of logical fallacies is such a good defense against the unfair and often very persuasive sounding rhetoric in our world today. And also, of course, it's good for them to see that when they come up in text and writing and to avoid using them in their own arguments so that they're stronger. All right, that was 12 fallacies in under 12 minutes.